Hello and welcome to New Orleans virtually. I'm Libby from Lucky Bean Tours and I'm standing in Jackson Square in New Orleans, Louisiana. This building behind me is the Presbytery, which is a Louisiana State Museum, and then this is St. Louis Cathedral, which you will see in just about every TV show or movie or broadcast from New Orleans. Today we are going to take a virtual tour of the French Quarter. The French Quarter is the oldest neighborhood in the city. It was established in 1718 when the city of New Orleans was established. In fact, the French Quarter was the entire city. So this is the neighborhood that we're going to tour today, and we'll visit some of the iconic sites and locations, and I'll tell you a couple of stories behind the buildings to prepare you for when you can come here for real. The official name of St. Louis Cathedral is the Basilica Cathedral of St. Louis, King of France. It's a beautiful church inside and out, and it's the third or fourth church named St. Louis that has stood right here. It has been in every production that is filmed in New Orleans, from Interview with the Vampire to President Bush's post-Katrina address to Princess and the Frog. Jackson Square is named after Andrew Jackson, the 7th President of the United States and the guy that is currently on the $20 bill. Jackson was not from New Orleans. He was, however, the American general when the Americans successfully fought off the British and stopped them from occupying New Orleans on January 8th, 1815. The war was the War of 1812 and the battle was the Battle of New Orleans. So it kind of catapulted Jackson to hero status. They started writing songs about him and plays about him, and eventually he did become the President of the United States. So many years later, when he was toward the end of his life, they decided here in New Orleans to honor him by placing a replica of the statue that was already in Washington, D.C. in our town square and renaming it Jackson Square. If you stroll along Jackson Square any given day, but especially on the weekends, there's lots of artists and musicians and entertainers, and it's full of music. It's just a really, really fun, lively town square. The natural boundary of the French Quarter is the Mississippi River. It's the largest river in North America. It begins up in Lake Itasca, Minnesota, and it ends about 90 miles downriver in the Gulf of Mexico. And it's the reason why New Orleans is here literally, because for thousands of years, when the snows melt up north, it makes the river rise, it comes down here, it overtops its boundaries, and it forms the land that makes New Orleans. So in 1718, when the French were looking for a spot to establish their city, they decided to do it right here on this little bit of slightly less low ground right along the Mississippi River. The Mississippi River also served as a gateway to New Orleans for hundreds of thousands of immigrants over the past 300 years. Behind me is the monument to the Immigrant, which is in Woldenberg Park, which is a little riverside park that you can stroll. The monument was financed completely by families of people who immigrated to New Orleans. Many of the families had their ancestors' names and stories engraved on the monument. The sculptor is Franco Alessandrini, and it was dedicated in 1995. One of the must-do experiences if you're visiting the French Quarter is Café du Monde for café au lait and beignets. Café au lait is chicory coffee with boiled milk, and beignets, of course, is this wonderful fried dough with a ton of powdered sugar on top. This statue behind me is Joan of Arc. It's a replica of the one in Paris. The original in Paris was commissioned by Napoleon, and this one was commissioned by Charles de Gaulle specifically as a gift to the people of New Orleans. She is situated at the entrance to the French Market, and behind her are the American flag, the Louisiana state flag, and the city of New Orleans flag. Yeah, there they are. We have a parade in her honor every year on January 6th. Welcome to the French Market. It doesn't always have a pumpkin at its entrance, that's just for the season. French Market is an open air market that's open every single day, has some great souvenirs, kitschy stuff like shot glasses and t-shirts, but also some good stuff made by local artists, and some really good food to try. This is the old Ursuline Convent, which is no longer a convent, it's a museum that you can tour while you're here. But it is the oldest building in the entire Mississippi Valley, not just New Orleans. Its construction was completed in 1742, and it's definitely worth seeing when you're here. One of the things that the French Quarter is most famous for is its architecture, especially balconies and galleries like this, where people like to sit out and enjoy a nice day. Technically, these are balconies. They are shallower and they're supported by brackets that come out from the building. And these that are deeper and supported by columns underneath, we call galleries. And all the ironwork on the balconies and the galleries just make it a stunning neighborhood. The apartment buildings that flank Jackson Square were originally townhouses, 16 on each side, and they're called the Pontalba buildings because they're named for the woman who had them. Buildings that flank both sides of Jackson Square were originally townhouses, 16 on each side, and they're called the Pontalba buildings, the upper Pontalbas and the lower Pontalbas, and that's just because they were built by a lady named Michael Almanester Pontalba. As I was saying, they were built by Michael Almanester Pontalba between 1848 and 1851. The Pontalba buildings are definitely of the French design, but they're made with all American materials. Bricks from Baltimore, ironwork from Philadelphia, and granite from New York. I'm here on Canal Street. Canal is the unofficial boundary of the French Quarter. Technically, Iberville Street is the first street of the French Quarter, but we all think of Canal Street as the sort of boundary. It's named for a canal that was never built, but it was the dividing line between the old neighborhood, the French Quarter, and then the newer neighborhood that started to develop after the Louisiana Purchase when more Americans started to move into New Orleans. So it's a bustling city street with your typical kind of skyscrapers in every American city, but also some of these wonderful older buildings that at one time were warehouses and general stores, but now are mostly hotels. This is the Louisiana State Supreme Court building, and it's right here on Royal Street. Royal Street is a nice street to stroll that has art galleries, antique stores, boutiques, and great restaurants. Now I'm on Bourbon Street. Now I'm walking on Bourbon Street on there's a party up there. On Bourbon Street on a Sunday afternoon, a month after the hurricane, so it's not as busy as it usually is. There are a couple of nice restaurants on Bourbon Street, but mostly it's known for souvenir shops, bars, partying, and gigantic drinks. All over the French Quarter, you see these signs that are made out of Spanish tiles, and they just tell you the name of the street when New Orleans was part of a Spanish colony. Usually it's just the Spanish version of the French word. You don't have to wait until nighttime to go to the nightclubs to hear good music. It's right here in the streets of New Orleans. A lot, but certainly not all of the French Quarter today on our virtual tour. If you were to walk all the way from Canal Street down through the entire French Quarter, you would end up here on Esplanade Avenue, which is a beautiful tree-lined street, mostly residential, that's the downriver boundary of the French Quarter. And on that side of Esplanade Avenue is the Marigny, and then the Bywater, more great New Orleans neighborhoods to tour. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me on this virtual tour of the world-famous French Quarter. I hope you all get to come here one day and tour with me in person.
In my arms, but when I woke in, I was mistaken. So I held my head and cried, because you are my sunshine, my only sunshine.